Hey everyone, welcome to the House of F.I.R.E. We are so glad you are here. As promised in today's videos, we are going to discuss, where we've been, give you kind of a 1-year update. It's been about almost exactly a year since our last video. What happened, what's gone on in the last year. I am sitting here in our new Airbnb. We've had it since October, and I'm going to talk about that and give you a little mini tour and just give you an update of what's going on with our family. If you're new here, welcome to the House of F.I.R.E. And if you are returning, we are so glad you are here. If you know our story, you know that we started House of F.I.R.E. back in about 2017. We started off as a podcast, had a co-host at the time that morphed into my husband coming on the show. And then eventually that transitioned to mostly me doing the videos on YouTube. And through it all, we started House of F.I.R.E. and we've always been about transparency and sharing our journey to financial independence. We discovered the financial independence movement in about 2016, and there were several influences to that. Choose FI, the Mad Scientist, J.L. Collins, going to Chautauqua. But through it all, we were in a desperate situation, over $1 million in debt, credit card debt, car debt, house debt, you name it, we had it. And we were just in a really rotten place of hopelessness. And when we found the financial independence movement, or FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early, we found hope. And through that, we were able to pay off our debt. We sold our house. There's lots of videos that go into the backstory of that, so I won't get into that now. But eventually what happened is we found out that we could save money, we could pay off our debt, we could retire early through not only saving, but spending less, investment strategies, real estate, all kinds of different things. So just to catch up where we were last year and the last time that we were here is that we owned 5 out-of-state rentals. They were doing really, really well. It's the first time we really owned out-of-state rentals. Our intention was to hold them long-term, use the cash flow, and the cash flow was going to be our vehicle to retire early, to basically use that cash flow to fund our retirement. And in the meantime, all of our investment accounts would kind of just sit there and grow. Then the pandemic hit, and it kind of just threw a wrench into everything. It wasn't necessarily that our investment properties were doing poorly. They weren't. But what we saw was we were becoming priced out of the market. I thought, like I think a lot of people thought, that the pandemic was going to create a housing crisis. But what actually happened was there was a boom, and property prices soared. It got to a point where we knew that we weren't going to be able to buy and stay in San Diego where we wanted to stay and own our own home. Kind of the catalyst for us to really start thinking about options was the house that we were living in. The owners, who were friends, and we had been living in that house for 3 years, decided to sell their property. And we were stuck with trying to find a place where we could afford to rent in San Diego. Ultimately, rents increased as well to a place where it was just really, really unaffordable for us to do that. So we had those things happening. We had the housing prices increasing. We had rents increasing. We were going to be forced out of our place. And we were kind of at a crossroads of what do we do? We knew that we want to stay in San Diego for the rest of our lives. We knew that we weren't going to be able to afford to buy a house here. We knew that we had these properties in Indiana that were really at the peak of their appreciation. And we started thinking about, well, what if we bought a multi-family unit here in San Diego? It would be one way for us to be able to afford a home in San Diego, have our tenants offset some of that mortgage. So ultimately what we decided to do was go ahead and sell our Indiana properties. One thing that we were struggling with the properties is that they were cash flowing really, really well. They had appreciated significantly in the short amount of time that we had them. And if we didn't pull that cash out before housing prices started to slow down, which we ultimately saw coming because mortgage rates were starting to increase, we were going to lose a big chunk of that equity that we had earned in those properties. And so ultimately what we decided to do was sell. And we sold. They sold relatively quickly, and we had a nice chunk of change sitting in our accounts. I'm also a licensed real estate agent. So what we did was we started looking at multifamily units here in San Diego, and we found this property. We had looked at a couple others. They checked really most of the boxes, but we kept running into problems with we wanted to do an FHA, so we would have a lower down payment, so we would keep more of our cash. The problem that we found in a couple of the units that we looked at were the zoning on them and proving that they were a multi-unit or proving that they had income. So then we found this property, and it really checked kind of every box. The zoning was right on it. The permitting was great on it. Both of the units on the property had been completely redone, and they were basically move-in ready. Normally we like DIY projects, but since we knew that we wanted to rent out the second unit and Airbnb the second unit, they were just done and they were ready to go. So we put in the offer. The offer got accepted with a little back and forth. It ended up being just exactly what we wanted. Ultimately, though, it was a risk. In order for us to now afford this $1 million mortgage, we would have to have a certain amount coming in from the rental unit for us to be able to afford to stay. And so it was a big gamble. So why Airbnb? We chose Airbnb because we thought it would provide us some flexibility with keeping the house open, like for holidays and stuff, if we wanted to have our daughter come or other friends and family come at the holiday. But it also, we felt, gave us the biggest upside as far as profits go, especially in the summertime. We are in San Diego, even though we live about 30 minutes outside of the city. We're in a beautiful area. We border the Cleveland National Forest, so there's hiking literally right out our front door. Half of the property is bordered by the National Forest, so no one will ever build there. It's a half an acre, so we're still kind of in the country. We're in a little town called Alpine, which is super quaint. There's a main street with lots of little antique shops and restaurants, and we're close enough to the beaches and the ocean, but also out in the country for people who maybe want to do other things while they're in San Diego. And the fact that we were on half an acre meant a lot to us for our boys, to give them a different quality of life growing up. So everything about this property really checked off everything. But getting back to the risk and why we thought it was a good risk, we did a lot of research on Airbnb, and we really felt that if we could provide people with a wonderful, not just stay, but an experience, that we would do well. And I have to say, we've been in here now for, 2 full months, going on 3 months, and we have been at between 80 and 90% occupancy, which is amazing. Our average daily rate is a little lower, but I'm not too concerned about that. Right now we're in the off season, and we're really focusing on occupancy and getting those 5-star reviews, since we are a brand new property. In another video, I'll go into kind of what it takes to get to the top of the searches. And we just, as of January 1st, were able to achieve a Superhost status, which I think is amazing to do that in basically 6 weeks. And I'll talk about how we did that and all of that. But we really did our research on what it would take to be a successful Airbnb property. What we wanted to make sure of is if the Airbnb didn't work out, that we also had a backup. And the backup for us was, would we collect enough rent if we were to put someone in this unit long term? So we did a lot of research on what rents are going for this size property in this location in a rural setting. And if we ultimately had to put someone in here long term, it would be enough for us to pay about half of our mortgage, which is what we needed. So all in all, that is why we believe that this risk is worth it. So where we are financially is that we do believe that we have a property that is going to continue to appreciate. We do intend for this to be our forever home. With the Airbnb, we are still paying no more than we were 4 or 5 years ago as far as rent goes. And then we're also on the upside, I think minimum we'll be able to at least pay half of our mortgage, but then in the summertime, we'll also make additional profit. And with that profit, we have plans for this property. In another video, I'll go ahead and I'll share kind of our plans for expansion and long-term, what we plan to do with the property. We have room for growth. It's big enough that we can put in an additional unit. We also have plans to turn a workshop that we have already on the property into an efficiency unit and make that into another Airbnb. And then we have space on another part of the property to put in either a trailer or a shed and turn it into a tiny house. So ultimately, we can turn this not into just the current Airbnb that we have, but put in 3 additional income streams. And ultimately, that will be the long-term goal for this place, and have it tie into our original plan for financial independence, was creating an income stream that would fund our retirement. So there's your update as far as, what's been going on financially for us. Just real quick, just to go back and talk about, why were we gone for a year and what's happened in the year. I think, like a lot of people, the pandemic hit a lot of us really, really hard. And my struggle has been with depression, and more than the depression, anxiety. And I found that with the channel and with social media, it was really a struggle for me to stay on top of having videos, looking at the metrics, looking at, how everyone else is doing and getting caught in that comparison trap. It really just affected my anxiety to a point where I just had to stop. As with a couple other times, I didn't intend for it to be as long of a break as it was, but it ultimately ended up being a year, and I didn't realize it was that long, but it was that long. And my hope has always been that our videos would help people. And so that's why I'm back, and that's why I'm here. I don't know what the future holds for the House of Fi. There's so much that was neglected for the past year as far as the website goes and the site and all of that. That it's a lot to take on to get it even back to where it was initially. But I do want to still encourage other people. So my hope is that I'll be able to maintain coming back and sharing updates and sharing our journey to financial independence with so many of you, because I think that there are others that are struggling in the same way that we have and our family has. We're in a period right now where inflation is really, really high. Mortgage rates are really, really high. And it's becoming hard for a lot of people just to sustain their daily and monthly living expenses. And so I think I'd like to talk about that in coming videos, as well as, how we're going to navigate that and how we are navigating that. So this video was a little longer than I intended, and I hope I was able to hit the high points. I do have plans for other videos. I've got a whole list of things that I hope I'll be able to share with you all. But if you are here, I sincerely thank you, and I appreciate you for coming and taking the time to listen. And I hope to see you back here soon, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.